Bam. We're live. Where's everybody? Where is everybody? No guest. No Matt Souza. No Will. No Caleb. No comments. Oh, yeah, it's 8 o'clock. Everyone's in bed. Let's see if Jorge Ventura is coming. This is going to be a good one, guys. This is going to, it's long overdue. Jorge Ventura, we've had him on 2 times before. First time we had him on, we just basically ran him through the ringer, checked his creds, vetted him, fell in love with him. He is a journalist. He is everywhere these days. I was first interested in him because he was working the border, and then our second podcast together, we had him on for a documentary he did. What was the name of that one, Jorge? The cartel one?
Yeah, Cartelville, USA.
Cartelville, USA. And then he came out with another one called Indoctrination Nation, which you got to see. And now he's working on another one called Zero to Hero. No, Hero
to Zero.
That was, I think that was a line from a, like, this is probably, you might be too young for this. Do you remember Vanilla Ice?
Vanilla Ice, yeah.
And he had a movie, and one of the lines in there was something like that. I went from zero to hero, or hero to zero. I think I was the only person who saw the movie. I think it made like $8 in the movie theater. I saw it as a kid.
Good times, man. Good times. No, it's good to be back with you, man.
You are everywhere.
Yeah, just literally landed literally like 2 hours ago back from Florida. Was at the Project Veritas release party for James's Keefe new book, American Muttrucker. So that was great to kind of get a little break from, kind of working and stuff and just hanging out with some folks. And good old Florida. Any excuse to go to Miami, of course I'm going to use. So there you go.
How do you get invited to that party? I must have not seen my invitation.
Was the cool thing is some of the reporters that work with James O'Keefe at Project Veritas, like a lot of the guys who do the undercover work, they love my border footage, so they actually invited me out there, which is really nice of them, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love seeing you everywhere. You are everywhere. Are you nervous going on all these shows? I just see you in all these shows, sitting in chairs, people asking you questions. I'm just like, holy cow, and touching on all sorts of topics. I mean, I don't hear anyone ask you about the border anymore. Now it's everything. You're the guy for everything.
To be honest, man, it's just it's a big blessing to have your work be recognized. I know reporters and stuff like that they work their whole lives and never really kind of get recognition that they deserve, or never even release like a documentary. So I've been just very, very lucky to be on podcasts like this, just really getting the work out there, because I'm the work that we're doing, it's not on the mainstream media. We're not backed by mainstream media. So all this stuff really helps out in getting this news out here. And I feel like my work is a lot of what I would call is the opposite of corporate press. So for example, like the documentary that we're just finishing up, the Hero to Zero, we're taking the opposite approach of corporate press, because the corporate press, what they did is, last year, all the firefighters and nurses and police officers, they praised them. They're like, oh my God, these are frontline workers. These are our heroes. Now, 1 year later, that same corporate press is demonizing these people, and they actually want these people to be fired, being put on unpaid leave. I mean, these are regular Americans just like us who have families to feed, and they were our heroes, and then all of a sudden, they're our enemies. So we're taking we always want to take the opposite approach from what corporate press is doing.
It's interesting. Did you see Hershey fired all their unvaccinated employees?
I saw that one. I also saw, it was like last week, it was like Nike fired all their unvaccinated employees, and then I actually took that article and I posted it on my Insta story. And it says, I put American company that uses slave labor in China fires unvaccinated American workers.
And what's fascinating to me, and Carhartt did it too, they're getting rid of their employees who have integrity, honesty, commitment. Like they're getting rid of I mean, if you're willing to be fired for that, I mean, that's the person you want to keep. It should be a trick. You know what I mean? They should fire. It should be like, just kidding. We're going to fire all the people who got vaccinated that we threatened. We know you can be bought. We know you can be coerced. We know, there's the joke. Man meets a woman at a bar, offers her $50,000 to come home with her. She says, sure. They get halfway to his house. Like, have you heard the story? I'll give you $25,000. She's like, fine. They get to his driveway. He says, I'll give you $500. She goes, what kind of girl do you think I am? He says, no, we already established that at the bar. I mean, it's like, come on, man. It's amazing that we're getting rid of so many good people. I wonder what's going to happen.
That's where I'm at, man. I'm just, for me, it's, I just don't like, what we're turning into as a country, and the fact that Americans cheer it on. Like, I would go, I go on Instagram, I would go on the Nike page because I love to read the comments. Like, what are people saying with Nike doing this? And people were like, "Oh my God, great decision by Nike. I'm going to buy more shoes." I'm like, "Oh, so you're on their team because they're firing, firing American workers who are unvaxxed, but when it comes to them using slave labor in China, you're okay with completely turning the blind eye." So it's always the fake social justice hero movement, and now we're seeing, which is actually really inspiring, is to see what the Canadian truckers are doing. My dad's actually a trucker himself, so I love to see that. Even the funny thing is, Stefan, is when you turn on the liberal mainstream media, how now they're just bashing these people. I'm like, these people are literally the working class. These are the people that you're supposed to be representing in media, but obviously you're so out of touch. You don't even know one trucker in your life. They're I believe MSNBC was calling them a cult. There was like a little clip of that going around Twitter. So it's just, to me, it's disappointing. It's disgusting what we're becoming as a country. The fact that other Americans cheer it on. Also, we got like half the country, if not even more, that supports censorship of the quotes of misinformation. They hate Joe Rogan, but when the misinformation comes from the White House, it's completely okay.
Yeah, the misinformation coming from the White House is crazy. What do you think about Joe Rogan's statement today?
I thought it was a great statement. I hope that he just keeps on going. I do remember when Joe Rogan signed on to Spotify, I had a bunch of friends like, "Oh my God, this guy's sold out." And I'm like, no, absolutely not. He's kind of stepping away from the YouTube censorship. But Joe Rogan, it's just it's pretty remarkable to see the effect that he has. But and then the Babylon Bee did the Babylon Bee always does the satire headlines. They did it was entire medical establishment is threatened by podcaster that gets high and talks about MMA and aliens. I mean, they are seriously so threatened. What I love is that just when you look at the ratings and the key demographic, Joe Rogan is just smashing CNN, and I think that's why they're just so angry that they're going on offense right now and trying to attack this guy, discredit him. But hopefully Joe Rogan keeps fighting it. I don't know what the hell is going to happen with Spotify. It looks like maybe down the road they might cut him off, but hopefully not.
Did you listen to his 9-minute talk he did on his Instagram?
I listened to about 3-4 minutes of it.
Okay, so the first 5 minutes are really good. And then he does some stuff that really, really disappoints me. He comes out hard and he basically says, hey, one of these doctors has patents in mRNA, and the other one that you're concerned about is the leading publisher in his field, blah, blah, blah. And he sort of stands up like, hey, what do you like? Then he says, maybe I should have people on both that represent both sides more. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean? You had Sanjay Gupta on. There's no one further left than that. And you gave him plenty of rope to hang himself. And he hung himself and he couldn't answer any of your fucking questions. And you cornered him on accident many, many times throughout the podcast. Then he says, they basically say that before these podcasts now that are speaking about COVID, there's going to be a disclaimer.
It's like a little warning sign.
Yes. Like make sure you check with a physician before you believe anything that you heard here. Here's the problem. Physicians and scientists are not people that should be making risk assessment or risk management for humanity. Ever, ever, ever. That is not their job. Their job is to say, okay, Jorge, we've taken your vitals. We look at your age. 1 in 17 million people who get COVID who fit in your demographic die. And so there's 300 million people in the country. So that means 9 of you are going to die. Do you want this preventative medication? And then you can say, well, how many people my age have died from that preventative medication? And they'll say 74. And then you'll be like, well, I'll take my odds with dying with COVID than the 74 that died from the, but they're not doing that. That is not doctors and scientists' jobs. Risk assessment is not their job. Risk management is not their job. That's our job. That's why we have liberty. 12,000 people die every year falling down the stairs. We decide whether we want stairs in our house. We don't leave it up to someone else. I don't, it's fucking, and that really, they are not an authority. They are not smart people. 50%, there's a doctor I know, and he said, the first thing a doctor says to you, he doesn't ask you, are you hungry? Or sorry, what kind of food do you eat and what kind of exercise you do? If that's not the first thing a doctor asks you, switch doctors. Well, I've been to 100 doctors in my life and none of them asked me that. And I believe that doctor's right. Because if you're not asking someone what they eat and if they move, then
what's also interesting, Sam, I know it was
so I'm a little disappointed in Joe. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but like, and you make a good point. A couple weeks ago, the country of El Salvador, the government actually put out a video that they sent to all their citizens, and they put it on Twitter, obviously, and it was encouraging folks to say, hey, another way to combat COVID-19, please eat healthy and act. And it was a whole 2-minute video. And for the audience who might be unaware, El Salvador, even a month or 2 months before that video even came out, they personally sent the government ivermectin to every single citizen.
Wow.
And, that's where both of my parents are from. So, I'm speaking with my mom. I said, Mom, isn't it fascinating that we are the richest country in the world and we can't even do that? We can't even get people the in-home COVID test. If you go online right now to order your COVID test, it's going to take 7 business days to get to you. We're the richest country in the world. We can't do that. But if Ukraine needs weapons and they need American soldiers to go die for them, oh man, within 24 hours, we'll have that ready for them. But when it comes to our own American citizens, they don't. So that's why I try to speak to my parents about. I said, how can a little country like El Salvador promote the health, send everyone ivermectin, yet we are, the United States is just so controlled by, big pharma that we can't even get people the in-home tests. My big thing with Fauci too is that, Fauci wants to be like, I'm this public health expert and, I'm basically the Jesus Christ of science. But Fauci never goes on Fox News. So he never talks to the other.
Has he never been on? Has he never been on Fox?
I don't think he's ever faced a Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson. So if you're Fauci, if you're supposed to be the person that wants America to be healthy and fighting COVID, you're supposed to not only talk to CNN but as well as Fox News. Talk to the other half of the country. He won't do it. I guarantee you, if Fauci reached out to Joe Rogan, was like, "Hey, I think we should do a podcast together." Joe's willing to do it. I've heard Joe on his show say multiple times, "Hey, if they want to, we'll do it," but they're not interested in that.
It hurts. It hurts me, and maybe I'm just naive because when I saw Russell Brand and I saw Joe Rogan sort of flipping the script and coming out of their sort of liberal phase and starting to wake up, and when those of us come out of our liberal phase, we stop looking at the outcome, trying to work on the outcome, and we start realizing that we start looking at the psychology of how things happen, how things manifest, how things actually occur. Of course, everyone wants equality, right? But you can't use racism to fight racism. And once you realize that, you start to make that shift. And they were making that shift. Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders, and Russell Brand was pretty liberal. And then over the last year, they started making the shift, and they started realizing, hey, this doesn't make sense. But for him to acquiesce on this, it is unsettling for me because I felt he was one of the heavyweights pushing that direction. Now, other people are just like, congratulations, Joe. Like I'm seeing Candace Owens is all up on his Instagram, like congratulating him, which makes me think that maybe I don't see the big picture. And then Joe also did post on Twitter today some stuff that was really positive about ivermectin. He posted some studies showing. So, yeah, and he threw his hands up in the air too. He said, hey, this is just a podcast. I don't know. Really, I'm just like a dude who just interviews people. And here's the thing. People say, hey, we need to compromise. We need to listen to both sides. We need to, there's all this stuff. But there becomes a point where 2 + 2 is 4. And if you say 2 + 2 is 5 and we compromise at 4.5, we're both stupid. Like I can't compromise with you. I'm a fucking idiot if I say 4.5. It's the same thing with like when I used to work for CrossFit and Greg Glassman would say squat below parallel. And people would say, no, you shouldn't squat. You should stay above parallel, when you squat. And if we would have compromised, we would have compromised at parallel. But that's not true. All of China and all of India and all of Latin America squats below parallel. That's how they sit down, So that's how they shit in the bushes. So You can't
Well, what we're seeing
compromise.
here right now, and Simon, what we're seeing in our society right now, where we are compromising, is when it comes to, I know everyone has different views on this, but when it comes to, this whole transgender movement, and now we're seeing where you have like these female swimmers getting beat by biological men who identify as female. But like you said, as a society, we're now meeting halfway. It used to be a mental illness to get a sex change and all this stuff, but now we've compromised it where we can't say those things, or we'll get canceled, or we get fired, or whatever.
Will you
So
tell the story?
we're seeing that in that section.
Will you tell the story that in Indoctrination Nation about the gentleman who rapes the woman and then gets transferred schools without notification to the parents?
Yeah, it was a super sad situation, especially for the father. So his daughter gets sexually assaulted in a restroom by this boy, but he identifies as female. And with the school board,
and that's what he was doing in the girls' bathroom, right? Because he identified with female. Okay.
Yeah, and he had like they call it fluid, right? Fluid. And the school board didn't want this obviously to get out to the media, so they kept everything hush hush. They were not trying to make any announcements about it. They then transferred that student to another high school. This is the same student that sexually just sexually assaulted a female, and he does the exact same thing at that high school. Big shout out to Luke Rosiak. He's an investigative reporter for the Daily Wire. He broke the story, and that kind of opened up the floodgates on all this whole thing with the school boards, with the parents fighting back in Indoctrination Nation, and eventually leading to a Republican win in the state of Virginia for Glenn Youngkin. Let me just remind folks too, the state of Virginia swung to Biden by 10 points. This is not a Republican state at all. It went to Biden by 10 points, and Youngkin won off the issue of education in Virginia. I think one of the good things that Youngkin did, now kind of looking on the outside, was that Youngkin, during his whole campaign, never mentioned Trump and never mentioned Biden. He kept the election local, and McAuliffe did the opposite. He kept bringing in the Trump, saying, "Oh, if you vote in Youngkin, he's a Trump," and then he actually brought in Biden to campaign for him. I just think that right now, a lot of people, like parents or just working class people, they're done with the whole nationalized politics. They want to get back to local level. What could you do for me? Who cares about Trump? Who cares about Biden? When CRT, this transgender education is getting introduced in my school boards. What are we going to do at the local level?
Do you see any of that happening in California? Did I lose you, Jorge?
What was that 7 star? You just
do you see any of this happening in California? Is there any hope that we can see some change in California?
That one I'm not sure. Man, I mean, like just yesterday we had Gavin Newsom at the Rams football game with also Mayor of San Francisco London Breed and Mayor Eric Garcetti. They were all unmasked, and the reason why it was such a big deal is because right now, believe it or not, we are still in state of emergency in this state. We have a mask mandate for all the schools, but the leaders don't have to do it. And to be honest, when Gavin Newsom had those pictures taken of him and they're published, it's almost like he knows that almost if the voters are just too dumb or they're just too naive to even, he's not gonna have any political blowback or punishment for this. Like, he knows this. I mean, he already did the dining in the French Laundry. So that I don't know. In California, it's almost like a lost cause at this point. But also, it also depends what county you're in. So we are seeing other counties like a Riverside, San Bernardino County next to me. They've been fighting back. They've been taking back their local elections. Here in LA County, it's almost no hope. Our district attorney is George Cascone. He's been making the national headlines because he's one of the softest DAs in the whole country on crime. He actually just released a male who was supposed to serve 50 years for a murder. He got out in 6 years. And then also, Seven, when you had me on the last time when we talked about Cartelville, I mean, right now, all these illegal marijuana operations by these drug cartels, you're just going to get hit with a misdemeanor, no felony. So in a county like mine, the cost, I don't see it. I think in San Francisco, I don't see it as well. Mayor London Breed just came out and said, hey, if you're vaccinated and boosted, you no longer have to wear a mask. So what I like to do, I always love to read the comments and see what people are saying back. And people in San Francisco are like fighting to have that mask mandate back. So I think in certain areas of California, yes, but then there's others like LA County, San Francisco. I think it's just completely lost cause at this point.
Yeah, I've seen when I go out now in California, at least in Northern California, I see everyone's wearing masks again. Like it's back stronger than ever. I've actually never seen it stronger than this. Is it like that where you live? Are you seeing more masks than ever,
So I
Jorge?
am very lucky. So I live in a small town called Palmdale. Yeah, I'm really lucky because I live in a small town called Palmdale, and even though we are in LA County, the city council actually fought back against the mandate. They said, "Look, we're not doing that. The whole lockdowns already did. I mean, they already closed so many small businesses where I live. Like, we're just not continuing anymore." So where I live, thank God that people are over it. They've already moved on. Actually, in Los Angeles, this might actually shock some people. I would say about 85% of the businesses in LA, they're not even following the vaccine mandate. So I mean, it's very few businesses where you go in and they're asking for the passport. Now, I was just recently in Washington D.C. about 2 weeks ago, and every single place that I stepped into in Washington D.C., they were asking for the vaccine card, and not only that, they were also asking for your ID to match that. So me and all of my coworkers and basically everyone that had also attended the anti-vaccine mandate protest in D.C. I mean, everyone was basically just in Virginia. Hotels in Virginia. Everyone was going out to eat in Virginia. So we're glad that DC lost some business, but I mean, it's insane that people are still fully bought into this. I'm just glad that at least Los Angeles, the people have been over. I mean, even in the Rams game, I mean, almost no one was wearing masks. Which look, I'm not mad about. I don't care about that. It's just I care about the rule makers who always can't seem to follow their own rules.
Yeah, it's fascinating too. You see them there standing next to Magic Johnson, who has AIDS, and about a week or two ago, there was that video circling around on the internet where Dr. Fauci, a very young Dr. Fauci, was telling people that yes, if you're in a room in close proximity with someone, you can get AIDS. Parents can give AIDS to their kids just by breathing on them, and I'm like, holy shit! It's
And
did
let's
you ever
not
did you ever see that video?
I've seen that. My favorite Fauci is still the one right when the pandemic started, and he was like, "Hey, you don't need to wear a mask. They don't even work." He didn't.
Right.
That's my favorite one. He didn't. With the funny thing is the CDC. If there's anything that's gonna wake up these normies, seven, it might be the CDC because the CDC has they come out like two months ago. We're like, hey, those cloth masks you guys been wearing the past 2 years, they don't work. Oh, if you actually caught COVID previously, that's actually working better than the vaccines. They said that the natural immunity works 6 times better than the vaccines. So then the CDC recently also came out and said, oh, if you're a nurse and you catch COVID but you're asymptomatic, you could still work. Instead of isolating for 10
Yeah,
days,
that's
just isolate for
amazing.
5 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just clown world really at this point. Really, that's why I just have to laugh at this stuff. It's so absurd.
Are you familiar with Scott Atlas?
I've heard of that name before.
He was on Trump's advisory committee for COVID early on. I'm just going to show you this one thing right here. Let's see if I can. And I'll put a link to this in the comments here. I highly recommend this video. It just came out a few days ago. And he basically outlines the entire thing. He was there basically telling Trump, like, hey, the worst thing you can do is lockdowns because the basically viruses don't have seasons. There isn't the winter season and summer season. What happens is in the winter, it gets cold. So everyone goes inside and that's where viruses spread. So the worst thing you could do is any lockdowns, any quarantines, do not do it. And then he just goes on and on. He talks about, he says economists who are the greatest critical thinkers on the planet, which a lot of people agree with, they all know that the quickest way to harm a society and kill people is to put an economy or society under economic duress. And he goes in and explains and shows all the charts. It's fascinating. I'll send you this link when we're done.
Yeah, send me it. I gotta actually send you a great article too, Seven. It's from the Gray Zone. Now, the Gray Zone, they're more known to be left wingy type, but they have been really good on covering the lockdowns and the effects on the working class. They have it documented that the lockdowns pushed 40 million Americans into poverty. Let me repeat that again: 40 million Americans into poverty, and we're not even talking about all the other countries that got heavily impacted by this as well, especially in those really poor communities. So the lockdowns were one of the worst mistakes in our history. I believe it's gonna go down as like a crimes against humanity. I think we're gonna look at the lockdowns the same way that we look at the Iraq War, and just gonna be. I mean, it's just one of the biggest mistakes the United States has ever made. Trump did not do a good job fighting back against the lockdowns. He kind of went along, and I just think the people around him just kind of fooled him into this whole situation. But he didn't come out against the lockdowns as hard as we wanted, I would say.
Another thing that I just saw before we got on the air. By the way, the Iraq War was a shit show because of we never found the weapons of mass destruction. Is that what you're saying?
That and I mean, basically, we killed over 1 million Iraqis. I mean, all of our own American soldiers that we sacrificed. Not even the ones that died too. The ones that come back with PTSD and their life is never going to go back to normal. It's been a
million Iraqis were killed in that war.
Yeah, I have a book here by I gotta send it to you, Sevan. It's by Chris Hayes, and what he did is he actually got all these American soldiers to actually give their first accounts of the war crimes that were committed in the Middle East. It's a fantastic book. I have it here somewhere. I got like a million books. Oh, I got this one that just came in. Someone, you got to check it out. I'm going to start reading it, but it's called Red-Handed: How Americans Elites Are Making China Rich. And you got Biden and Xing on that cover. That's great.
Red-Handed. Did a friend of yours write it?
Yeah, this one just came out on the 25th by Peter Schweizer.
Hey, what was the best thing about going to that O'Keefe party? Were people having fun?
Oh man, people are having fun, letting loose. For me, it's always great to just kind of see everyone network a little bit. But it was a great time. O'Keefe knows how to throw some fun parties.
And was he spinning the records? Was he on the turntables?
He wasn't on the turntables, but he was him and his group, they did like a performance. So he was out there, he's like a dancer theater guy. So he's out there dancing and all that types of stuff. O'Keefe does have some moves.
How does that organization stay afloat? How do they get their money? Do they have deep pockets?
That's something actually I wondered on myself. I don't know how they stand up. I think through donations, raising money. I believe I was reading an article that like last year they raised like $10 million. So I think it's just donations, funding. I gotta look at that myself of how these guys are cashing it in.
Yeah, he's fucking shit up. I'm impressed. Another fascinating thing about the Indoctrination Nation was that Thomas Jefferson High School, and how they had 70% of the high school was Asian, and they started calling the people there white Asians in order to kind of make it okay to be racist against them and push them out.
Yeah, one of the funny things I think about this whole situation with Indoctrination Nation in Loudoun County is if you just watch kind of the mainstream news and you don't live in Virginia, you probably have this idea in your head that like, wow, all these white parents are angry, and these white parents, I'm telling you right now, the majority of people that were angry in Loudoun County were all parents that were not born in the United States.
Yeah, and I think tons a lot of them, Indians and Asians, tons of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, a lot of Americans forget that a lot of these immigrant parents are actually more conservative than your American conservative. So right now, I'm actually glad that you kind of brought up that conversation earlier, Stefan, about us compromising. So what kind of outside looking in, it feels like the American conservative has compromised on the transgender issue. You know who doesn't compromise? Those parents from India, those parents from China, those parents from El Salvador. Virginia has a high Salvadoran population that swung to Youngkin. So once you introduce that type of education on their children, I mean, you just woke up a beast that you didn't want to mess with, because they're going to organize, they're going to mobilize. And, the majority of people that were angry were, like I said, were parents from India, China, El Salvador. I mean, these were immigrant parents that were like, wait a minute, this is not the America that we know. We actually escaped countries with communism. And this kind of seems like we're kind of headed that direction where you want to tell these kind of white kids that they're oppressed, even though they live in the same neighborhoods as those other kids. The big thing too, Seven, that I took away from just kind of investigating was everything that we're seeing, it gets introduced to the teachers first. And what I mean by that is they start to brainwash the teachers first. Then it starts to move into the students. The good thing is with Loudoun County is you had teachers that just were not gonna go with it. They leaked us a bunch of their training video, which you can see in Indoctrination Nation of like I believe one of the videos was like a little cartoon of a race, and it was like the white track runner starts like ahead of the black track runner and the brown track runner. So that was introduced to teachers, and obviously once the teachers are indoctrinated, then they can start to push it on the students. So that's something that was kind of interesting for me, was to see it, to see that. I think another big takeaway for me was all the sexualized content that
crazy.
gets introduced to these kids at a young age. It's just, when I was going to school, that was never even a thing. But these kids are reading books about same-sex sex. There's a book called Rick that got introduced to these kids, where Rick is like a girl, but then she transitions into a boy. I mean, it's just odd stuff that really doesn't have to do with math and science and all like the basic stuff.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me that the problem, they were trying to make the school more diverse, and they ended up just letting in more white kids. I mean, it was a complete shit show. It's a complete shit show. How about the Youngkin guy? Did you meet him? Have you met him, the governor? Is he a real Republican, you think? Did I lose you, Jorge? Youngkin? And his lieutenant governor? Well, I'm trying to look her name. What's her name? Did I lose you, Jorge? Jorge, you froze.
Hey, can you still hear me? I'm back in here.
Now I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah. Have you met Glenn Youngkin? No, damn, you broke up again. Or Winsome Sears. Did you ever meet her? Jorge. The Palmdale internet. I think it's your internet, Jorge. I'm going to blame you. I don't think we've had troubles before. So the school that Jorge and I were talking about, it's called Thomas Jefferson High School. It's in Loudoun County, Virginia. It's considered the best high school in the United States, best public school in the United States. No surprise, 70% of the kids who go there are Asian, and the school was stormed. Did you switch locations? No, same location. Still Jorge Ventura? Is that you? Are you there, Jorge? He came in on another line. I see him. Do you guys see him? Winsome Sears. Yeah, man, I'd like to get her on the podcast. Have you spoken with her, Jorge? Winsome? Hello? Jorge?
No, we were trying to reach out to her, but we're hoping that we get an interview with her down the road and with the Governor Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah. So is he a real Republican? I mean, how does that happen? How bad does it have to be that such a blue state, like you said, 10%, Biden won there by 10 points. How does that happen? And can that happen here in California? That's all I want to know. Oh man, we don't have Jorge.
The big thing was, yeah, the big thing that really started to swing this thing was
Jorge, we might have to reschedule, buddy. This is bad. I'm not able to hear you. Oh, he's out. The name of his movie is Indoctrination Nation. That's his second documentary. Then he has another one coming out, Hero to Zero. That one's going to be looking at first responders. You guys remember the narrative in the beginning, right? Tommy, Republican, but not conservative. Yeah, I'm curious. I am curious. You went into a Walgreens. There's some crazy statistic, like 24 Walgreens in San Francisco have been shut down because crime there is so bad. Something like that in San Francisco County. If I had Caleb here, I would have him look it up. Okay, well, that was a quick and short show. Tomorrow, we have a gentleman on from Australia. He was serviced by the injection, and he is fucked up from it. His name is Brent Morris. Brent Morris, Australian kid, got the injection and had a fucking heart attack, I think. Hello, Jorge. Jorge. Is it you, Jorge? I think it is
I'm
you.
back in here. 7, can you hear me?
I can. I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. You froze. Damn, man. I really like George. I really like George too. I'm telling you. He's a good dude. And I mean, if you look on his Instagram, he's everywhere and he's all over the place. And it's 8:00 at night. Probably the last thing he wants to do is be on a podcast with a shitty connection.
Give me a sec.
He'd rather be asleep, getting ready to take over the world tomorrow. There's a clip, Jorge, that you guys play of Ibrahim Ibrahim Kendi's. And someone in the crowd asks him to define racism. I think that's the author of Critical Race Theory. And someone asks him to define racism. And in that definition, he uses the word racism 3 times. I mean, you can't define a word using the same word that someone asked you what the word meant in the definition 3 times. It's nuts. He's crazy. He is batshit crazy. You're not. Jorge, you are not back in here. Hey, did you meet? Okay, you met O'Keefe. Have you met Scott Wiener? I think I met Scott Wiener once. What?
Oh, I haven't met him, and I want to meet him.
Oh, you're breaking up so bad. You're breaking up so bad. Can anyone hear Jorge, or is it just me? Someone says, "Damn, I really like Jorge." Good. That means you can't hear him, right?
Appreciate it.
What if I gave Jorge a call-in number instead? Do you want to try that, Jorge? You just want to call in and talk? You want to call me on that number?
I'm down. As long as this works, let's do it.
I think he's going to call in. He's just frozen. Does everyone else see him as frozen too? Someone tell me what you guys see. Do you guys see a frozen Jorge? Oh, here he is. Here he is. Hey. Hey.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hey, can you close your YouTube or turn off or can you mute your mic and then we won't get the echo?
Yeah, my mic is muted.
Okay, then maybe you're going to have to turn off your video.
Give me 1 second.
Echo, yeah, that was pretty bad.
How's the connection now?
Sorry, guys. We're striving. Give me a chance to review my notes. It is fascinating that Virginia voted for that guy. Half-ass. No, it's not even half-ass. It's like quarter-ass. It's like quarter-ass. It's 1/4, 1/5, 1/6 ass. But you guys will tolerate it. You guys are good dudes. I wonder what happens to Terry McAuliffe. Terry McAuliffe. I wonder what happens to Terry McAuliffe. Flat ass. Yeah, flat ass. That's right. Flat ass. Frozen. You guys are good. Now I'm getting the feedback I want. Hey, Jorge, how am I ever supposed to have you on the show if I can never hear you ever again? I just see you. What am I supposed to do? How do I have you as a podcast guest if you're always frozen or I can't hear you? Where do you can you switch to the other room where you normally are when I talk to you?
We should be good.
Jorge, at least you got frozen with a smile on your face. He can hear us, I think. That's
Oh
why he's
no!
smiling.
Can you hear me?
All right, guys. Thank you. Jorge, we have to circle back around. Have you on again in a new location. Jorge Ventura, the movie is Indoctrination Nation. Google it, check it out. I'll put a link. And his new movie coming out is Hero to Zero. It's frontline workers getting fucked, and that was quick and easy. All right, tomorrow we have Brent Morris on, and if you want to see the whole lineup, you can go to our YouTube station, the Sevon Podcast. Hit the reminder button on all the links. Damn, I drank that cup of coffee.